Hey everybody, having some coffee and we're going to break down the mix on Pop Singer, which I mixed on Harrison Mixbus 32C version 9. Boy, am I loving this software. Coming from the analog world and then going digital and Alcy Hod, if you guys have read the adventures of Mixer Man. Uh, if you if you haven't, that's a great audio book if you've spent any time at all in a recording studio. Um, from Alzy Hod to this is like going right back to the original studio. It's so nice. So it's very simple construction. This song, it's 4 guitars. There's a pair of electric guitars plus a lead, and then an acoustic guitar part just to make a little more drive and a little more mid-range bite. Joey Finger played the drums on this one. And let's see, I've got everything muted down but the drums. And this is how it ended up sounding after all the processing and stuff. Oh, I cheated a little bit. So that feels pretty good. Let's have a look at the kick drum and what we did there. So what I love here is that I can turn on my buses, and I do like to I take the bass guitar and the kick drum and I send that to one of the buses, and I call it low end, and so I can kind of marry things up a little bit. So I'm going to turn all the processing off there, and it looks like I put a little EQ on it, so I'll turn all of that off, and I've got some of the Harrison built-in stuff here too. So I'll play just the kick drum as Joey sent it to me. He records at his place in a fairly small room, but he's a very good recording engineer. So he gets me great sounds. He tunes well, and what a feel. I just love, especially his hi-hat work. His cymbal work is really easy to mix. So it's got just a little flap, but of course we're not mixing a kick drum, we're mixing a song, so I'm going to throw the bass in too. And that's not working out so well for me. The bass is just recorded direct through the 610. I do have some processing on that, so I'll turn that off and turn the EQ off. So this is what we got. So now I'm soloing the bus where these two land, and I grabbed a little bit of EQ. I gave it some top at 2K, just a couple dB. And I went over to the slate materials, and I'm going to go ahead and sometimes things get away from my old eyes here. Let me close that down and get it turned on. So that's after my compression. I'm using a distressor from Steven Slate. I love the optical compressor on this. This is a 6:1 ratio. I'm using also this revival thing, just flat, but I'm just kind of sending it through old gear, so to speak. So to me, that kick drum is still, the two aren't married very good. So I compress the kick drum just slightly with the Ace compressor. These are really simple, easy to use tools that come with the Harrison software, and I find them really accurate. They're very, very nice sounding stuff. And I did use their Ace compressor or EQ, so I'll now get rid of that flappiness. There we go. You see that I'm very aggressive with Joey's kit overall. At 500 hertz. It's a hellacious dip I'm taking out of there, and that's kind of to compensate for the small room that he's in. But all in all, it sounds great. But I like to kind of make room for things, so it's rare that I solo instruments when I'm mixing anyway, just for a second. So that's the low end. I did attempt a trigger for a minute on that kick drum, And I decided that Joey's was better than the Trigger. So anyway, let's move on to the snare drum and see what we did there. I'm confused. I'll turn the sends off here. I've got a couple of different things going on this snare drum. I brightened him up at about 5K. So I'm going to turn that EQ off. I'm going to turn the monitors up just a little bit. So really nice. Let's add his down snare. I've also got a pretty good little bump here at 9K. I'm just brightening that up, and then of course I did a low pass filter on that. Combined, it's very nice dry signal, really good. Now what I do with the snare drums is another little trick. Here's that 500 hertz coming out of that snare drum again via that Ace compressor, and I've just pinned myself in a little corner there. Or I mean the EQ, the Ace EQ. I like that thing. So we've got that. Now I'm going to add, I sent it to another bus in parallel, just like I did with the low end, and added a bunch more stuff. You know, the first thing I did, and I can talk vividly about this now that SSL and Harrison are one company. That's very exciting news. Is I'm using the SSL bus compressor. So I'll turn that off and then turn it back on. It's just giving it a lot more body, and I'm adding that to the dry signal. So it's parallel compression. And then I threw a 480. This is from the folks at Relab, and I couldn't be happier. They've really done a nice job with this plug-in. I'll turn that on. And this is just to kind of widen it out, but not too much. And then I EQ'd the overall with the Ace EQ again, and there's that 500 dip that I'm doing on Joey's kit. That's pretty consistent. So that starts to feel pretty good. And then I did add one more gated reverb, which is another 480. I remember the days when we had one 480 to share across all of the studios. So it's really nice. I got to use two. So this is just a plate, just to try to stay with that 70s vibe. And that just made the tail a little bit larger. Let's see. I did EQ that 480 as well. So that's what our snare drum ended up with, and very little processing, none at all on his hat. The toms, I just did some light compression using the Bluey. The Stephen Slate 1176 Blue Edition. That's really, really nice and close to the original, I think. And it's easy to tune in. And I'm just taking those tops off so that it can be meatier and last a little bit longer. As you see, I've got a very, very long release on those toms for the compression. I did use the built-in gates, and I don't know how well you can see, but there's a gate on every single channel, and they're really good tunable gates. So I was using the gates for the toms, and then went ahead and went back in and did an edit, cleaned them all up, you know, using editing instead. Just because, well, I don't know, psychological? Well, why do I do that? So the toms are cool. Let's look at our overheads now. And looks like I'm going to take the EQs off. So that's what he gave me. These are very close mics. I like the toms sound really nice in these overheads. So I added some console EQ. Just a little top, and then I carved out at about 2K, just so that we can reserve that space for the guitars. On the compressors, let's see. I didn't use anything there on the console, but I did, again, very spoiled here. I went up to the bus compressors, and not a lot there, just kind of catching anything that's really big on the overheads. In fact, I'm now seeing that I elected to turn them off at the final mix. I didn't even use them. The ACQ, I'm a big fan when I need to carve of these. And you see that I'm taking the bottom off. And I'm taking some of that. This is at, what do we got here? 4K. Just keeping that kind of out of that sibilance area. So they're very pleasant to listen to. Didn't do a lot there. Now the rooms, I'm doing a lot there. The room mics are just kind of way up high. I like what they do. They're a handy tool. I did some pretty extreme compression on them. And I just took all of the low end. So if I were to turn these EQs off, you see that there's a lot of puffy information there. And you know, when you're mixing, you decide how much of that do you need or from where do you want that power. I didn't want it from these room mics. I'd put a little reverb on there too. So I just took it all off so that it just kind of grabbed the high end. So that's what the Harrison EQ is doing. And then with the compression, just to kind of aid the overheads. So when I marry the two of these up, it sounds like this. Small room sound. So it looks like we got a little something cooking here now. Now I'm a big fan of Joe Walsh and his production techniques. So I actually ran my bass back through my talk box into the U47, and I played the talk box just from the original track that I had cut. So I'll just kind of solo that for you. So I was able to concentrate on what my mouth was doing rather than playing the bass. It's a noisy signal and yucky and very Turner-esque, and I love it. So that's the drums and the bass, and really, you know, the record kind of lives on the drums and the bass. And I thank Joey for doing such a great tight part. It was just, he's so easy to work with. Let's look at the acoustics now. They just kind of give some meat. I did have some EQs that I used, and I elected to turn them off. I'm using the opto compressor again, the distressor. You know, I never got to play with the original analog distressors. I love that compressor. Wow, that's really, you can get yourself in trouble with that thing pretty quick. It's a hot rod. But I really like when I need to pull something up to the end of your nose, you know, you can do it with that thing. And I like the snap, the kind of high-end snap that an opto compressor gives you, especially on vocals. It's so good, so good. So the acoustics just kind of lay there doing that part in support of these electrics. See how they blend up. Yeah, so not a lot there. I EQ'd those acoustics a lot. Again, it's not about how it sounds when it's soloed. It's how it affects the track. And I wanted that low mid-range 500 hertz back from the drums that I took out to kind of hit me here and have a little power without being really loud. And so that's what that was about. Now on the electrics, let me get to a part of the song where they play a little more here. There's the acoustics and the electrics. So we'll start from here. So there's, I've got that panned kind of hard left. Now I doubled it, but you can't, I didn't really mix the double. So the double on the right side, I kept dark. So then when I combine them, instead of it sounding like a double, it sounds like a very, very subtle delay that's kind of hidden on the right side. So that it can be featured off of the left side. The standard EQ, and here again is where Harrison 32C really shines, is that you can EQ a guitar. So there's flat. So I'm given 4 decibels here at, around 1 point, I'm going to say that's about 600 hertz. And you understand that EQ, the more you turn it up, if you want a bump and you turn it up, it's also going to spread the Q for you, so it's got a bigger impact. And that's why I was so attracted to the original analog console, is because for guitars you could really carve without having to chew up a bunch of outboard gear that we didn't have back in those days. We had to do everything with the board. So I really love that about it. It's a very warm sound. So I'm going to come to the next part that I played. So I've got the acoustic, that first telly, and then this second telly. All of these are through the Metz amplifier, which I need to do a review on for you guys so you can see how good John Metz is at building an amp. But you know, it's so versatile, and so when I needed American rock and roll, it dialed right in for me. So that's straight into the amp. There's no trickery going into the amp at all. Just a Neumann U47 on a 12 EV12L that's stuck into a Mojo cabinet. Now that 12L is well broke in. It's from the 80s. I found it on Reverb in this crappy, it was in a really crappy cabinet, but the fact that it was a broke-in 12L, it made it worth it. So yeah, cool. So I cut a second part, and it comes in later, and I'll show you how this was processed. Well, I guess I'm not even able to show you the original, but I played the second part through the Metz, and then I ran it back through a DoD chorus, that original thing that we had at Junior's Motel. It's a Performer stereo chorus 565. Let me see. I'm going to disconnect some shit so you can see what this thing is. This was the secret weapon, this crazy thing. And I think I probably have it set just exactly the way it was for this part. But what it does is it takes a Telecaster and makes it a man-eating Telecaster. I don't know how it does it, but it's phasing and whatever a chorus does. But I'll play I ran it through there so that I had a stereo chorus. And so you'll hear that. So that just the right side, and then when you combine them, it's just this man-eating sound when you're sitting in the center. I got to plug this back in or I will forget, and then there will be mayhem, and I will think I have to go into repair mode instead of record mode. There, order is restored. So that's about all of the instrumentation. That's the whole dang thing. So lots of room for the vocal. The lead I played through the Metz. I actually did a video on that, a short on Facebook. I don't think it's on YouTube, but go find me on Facebook too if you want to. So I did like 3 passes, and I kind of put the themes together, and then I tried to figure out the connections, and then the 3rd pass felt really good, and I got the feedback I was looking for. But that was the Les Paul into the Mets with a kind of a Tom Petty-ish, Joe Walsh-ish, deeper than Joe Walsh, but that's how that was recorded. Again, just straight up. Now I did use the compressor a little bit in Harrison Mixbus there, and that's the only channel other than the room mics that I actually use the onboard drive, which is kind of a saturation, just a warmer. It's a very subtle warmer, kind of a hot plate, you might say. But I liked what that did to the overall tone, and I needed that to jump out without being harsh. So there's a good amount of 1K that's been added via the 32C EQ here, but there is no compression on that lead at all that I can see. Let me see if I used any. Did I use any on the board? No. No, that's just straight out of the Mets. How about that? John Metz. You should check out his amplifiers. It's metsamplification.com. M-E-T-Z. The guy is a Dumble. I always wanted a Dumble, and he answered my call because he said he spoke the language, and boy, he did. And it's just a 20-watt. It's a 20-watt studio amp, and I just couldn't be happier with it. So it was time to sing the damn thing, and I think I've already expressed how I love that job, but I did it. I tried to just tell the story in a tone that was almost believable. So it's really hard to produce your own vocals, and then it's even harder to mix them. I got to be really happy, or at least at peace with everything, before I can call something like that done. So, one of you better singers should probably step forward and decide you'd like to be in the band. I welcome you. Send a demo to Fleming Field Airport, and I will listen to you. Now, Ashley Commodore was also kind enough to come over and do some backgrounds, and she was absolutely wonderful. I went to an array of compressors for her because she's got a lot of power. So I used an old Bluey again. The trimmer was involved, so I used the Blue Edition FET compressor, and then hit her again with the Opto compressor from the Distressor. And then I just stayed flat again on this Revival thing. It just kind of came with the package that Stephen Slate was offering when I bought these compressors. And I don't know, I just like plugging in old gear, I guess. I'm not using it, but I'm running it through it, and it's not hurting anything. So it's really pretty just bare compression. Now let's get into some of the other effects that are being used here. I tend to lay out my console the same every time. So I got my low end and my snare, and then whoever's front and center has their own bus. And then I have my toys, and these are various toys that I can use. And let's see what was plugged in. I didn't use the toys on a single thing. So we'll discuss the toys on another record. Slap. I'll hit the spill here, and I've got a little bit of slap on Ashley, both of her parts. It's probably pretty subtle. Let's go back to the edit window and see if we can find Ash. Let's see. There we got her. Woo! Is she something or what? Woo! She brings the energy. So let's solo her up. So I got I'll just hear just the slap. Oh, I'm calling it slap. It's not slap. It's Clear Mountain Domain. Been around long. Realize I'm a fan of Bob Clearmountain. Um, I really love this program. You can you can build the very things I used to have to build in a patch bay. It's all built here for you, including a mixer. So I generally start with one of his presets and then radically change it. In this case, I have the top and the bottom off the delays. There's two delays, and they're very close in time. One's 518 milliseconds, the other one's 544, and of course they're split in stereo. And then those are sent to the reverb unit, and these are great. So I'm using, just on the delay, I'm using a concrete stairwell, and that appears to be, and then mix this chambers, which that's another sampling of kind of a closet at Bob's studio. I think he used to keep the tapes in there or some shit. And so those have kind of different sounds. And so I'm adding that just to those two stereo delays. Nothing on the actual close. So that's what I decided to change the slap to that. Now, after I got through Bob's reverbs, I needed something a little more modern yet. So I got more of those tails with a 480. And uh-oh, now I've done it. And let me see. I don't want to change anything because this is the actual thing. It's a preset that I found that gave it all of that swirling stuff right out of the gate. Now, in addition to all of that, I have a quarter note delay panned to the right. And that, let's see what's doing that. It's just on her main backup, the one where she does her scats. And I popped that in just to give her a tail on the end of some of her scats. So that's automated in. Did I mention with Harrison Mixbus 32C, you can automate every single button, every single pot. So if you've got a little idea like that, you're just 5 minutes away from realizing it. You just do it. The ping pong, let's see, did I spill anything into that? My lead went into this ping pong. So what I'm using with the ping pong is another Harrison product. It's the 3D triple delay. I love this thing. I sync it to 113 tempo, and this gives you a left, a center, and a right delay. And you can play with where they are using these. You can play with how wide they are, how they bounce, do they bounce into each other, all kinds of crazy things. And I've always built these using as many delays as I could get in the old analog studios, and it would run out, and then I would have to use it for everything. But in this case, just on the lead guitar, I was able to do 3 separate delays from one unit, all synced up. And then, if I know me, I probably threw a little bit of reverb, and I didn't. I decided to leave it. But on the return channels, the mix buses, I can put something like that on here, and then I can send it to one of the last 4, which I generally use for my main reverbs. That way I can, if I want to make an effect wet, I just send it just like another channel. And that's the best reason to go with the full 32C packages, because there's so much power there to be had with that. The gated reverb we covered when we were talking about the snare. The Motown Room. This is Harrison's, or I'm sorry, this is Bob Clearmountain again through Apogee. I really dig their stuff too, really good. And I'm just using his Motown preset, and it's mostly his his closet. I guess that's going to be on my lead vocal. Nope, that's on the lead. So I think it's come time to actually listen to that lead if we're going to do that. So let me find it. Okay, we'll play that lead and play around with some of this stuff. Did you notice nothing's happening? So did I. Let's see what I've done. I've got everything spilling, so I can't see everything. Let me turn the spill off and see if I think I've probably soloed something. Ashley. Okay, here we go. So we should have that lead here in just a second. No, we won't. I had the wrong spot and everything. And you know, I don't edit any of my videos when I'm doing this, right? I'm playing out in the open, so you can hear a lot of bleed from that mic. So the ping pong, you can hear it starting to waver between the two on that feedback. Now I'll add that Motown room. Sorry. So that sounds like a lot, but that was just the effects. Let's see, the hall. I use a couple of things for my hall. This is another great product from Harrison. This G-Verb is really good. And you know, I listen to Bob all the time, Bob Clearmountain, but I decided I better listen to some of Andrew Shep's records. And man, what he does with the guitars is really interesting on those Chili Peppers. I gotta look into more of that. But I'm told that, you know, he just uses D-Verb in Althihod. And that used to be my only reverb when I made the switch. And it was okay. Well, it's the same thing for sure with this thing, only much, much better. You can do pre-delay and all these things, and it's a very pleasant reverb, very, very usable. So I have that at my disposal, and I always have, if I'm going to do something, a 480 standing by. And it looks like I didn't use a hall at all on this song. I didn't need it. You know, just because you have it doesn't mean you got to use it. And then this last one is, let's see, what did I spill into this? Just the left side telly. Went into Bob Clearmountain Domain again, and I started with the Start Me Up Keith Richards guitar, and you know, I think about that sound. Ba-na-na. How many times have you heard that in a football stadium and all that stuff, and people don't realize that the reason that is awesome is Bob. Yeah, Keith played it, but Bob made it awesome. And that reverb turns out to be a marble bathroom, and that's where most of it is born. So there's a delay pitch that has the deeper part of that reverb on it, and then just a little bit of the direct signal gets some reverb too, and that's what's widening out that main that part. So I really dig those tools, and that's about it for the mix. That's how she's all broke down. All the way at the end, I usually slip a bus compressor in, the Harrison bus compressor. I use that very lightly when I'm mixing, And then when I'm getting close and I'm at +6 and I feel like everything's okay, I open up the back of that compressor so that it's adding a couple of dB, and then I hit this. And so I do like the SSL bus compressor, and I ended up not using very much of it at all because I don't like to have too much glue on the end before I go to mastering, because it kind of ties my hands a little bit. And then on this particular single, I did do the mastering myself for the first time in a long time, and that was terrifying, but that's a whole nother subject that we can get into some other time. Lastly, this particular mixing tool, I can't really demonstrate out in the open, but I did mix most of it in the headphones using the Stephen Slate headphones. This is VTX. I really like Archon Studios. The midfields are those ATC speakers. And I swear to you, I'm sitting right here and I have a pair of NS10s right here. And I'll be in those headphones and nobody in the airport terminal knows I'm in here mixing. And I'm rocking back and forth and I'm in it, and I swear to God that I'm listening to these speakers. I'm not in the headphones. And Stephen just did an update on this, and it sounds better, more believable yet. You could kind of tell that there was some trickery going on. I can't tell about any trickery now. And man, when you get to listen in all those different environments, I like to send it to the club and to the car just to see what it's going to kind of be like. And if you're not nailing the car, you're not nailing your audience, because they're probably listening in their car, so, or on their iPhone. And he just came out with an iPhone thing too. So anyway, that's a long-winded explanation of how I mixed Pop Singer. I'm amazed that any of you made it this far, but if you do and you enjoy the channel, give me a comment or some kind of a like or something, and I'll keep doing this, and we can keep talking about engineering and mixing and having fun with our software. All right, peace out.